GM's Dustbuster Vans, as many refer them as, will forever be polarizing. From when they first came out in 1990 to present day, they are some of the strangest looking vans ever. The Toyota Previa is another example of a bizarre looking van from the 90s. Kind of looks like an egg or a jelly bean. These weren't the only minivans from the 90s with sloped front ends. A lot of other automakers were following this trend. Of course, the minivan didn't start out like this. They were pretty boxy with their debut, as many cars on the road were, until Ford came out with the Aerostar in 1986.
There's a dynamic new shape on the American road, a vehicle so aerodynamic
that it's right for this age. Ford Aerostar.
One of the ways Ford highlighted its futuristic design was by morphing a space shuttle into the van. Here's a photo from the 1986 sales brochure of the Aerostar next to a space shuttle. Below it reads Dynamic Design and talks about how its shape helps improve fuel economy, reduce wind noise, and contributes to improved handling. Now, of course, I don't sound like I was born in the 80s and wasn't around when these first came out, but these were very advanced for the time, or so I've heard. I mean, look at the competition. The Caravan and Astra weren't nearly as advanced cosmetically speaking, but, they were also introduced before the Aerostar. These vans sold quite well for Ford and were on the market up until '97 when they were replaced by the horrid Windstar. I'm referring to the first generation, just horrible quality in those, and they were also notorious for head gasket issues. Anyway, many people loved their Aerostar, or still do. There was an extended version, a panel van, multiple different engines to pick from, an Eddie Bauer trim that was one of the first luxury options for a van, an all-wheel drive system, and it kicked off the sloping design for the minivan. Technically the Caravan did, but for the purpose of this video I wanted to begin with the Aerostar as it follows the theme for this video. The next automaker to feature this design was Mazda with the MPV, introduced in 1989. The sloping front end is pretty noticeable, not nearly as much as the Aerostar, but it's there. The MPV was designed as a minivan specifically for the American market, but technically it's a wagon. These first gens never came with rear sliding doors. These Mazdas are pretty interesting vehicles. Some came with four-wheel drive, others were rear-wheel, and initially they sold well, but sales fell off due to the upcoming competition. Eventually we get to this point, the first generation U-body vans from GM, commonly referred to as the Dustbuster Vans. They were released in the middle of 1989, at least the Lumina APV was, followed by the Silhouette and Transport. The design of these vans is truly breathtaking, and I don't know if it's a good thing or not. On screen are some of the concept photos for this van, and it wasn't too far off to the post-production model. Now, the Transport concept was a little far-fetched, having a roundish physique, and while it does look fascinating and the front sort of mimicked the APVs, it was not approved. The title of this video, When Minivans Look Like Spaceships, these first-gen U-bodies sort of sparked the idea. Here's an ad for the 95 APV with the title reading, Greetings Earthlings, with a space backdrop. The 91 Transport brochure stated, it's like having a space shuttle on four wheels. Another Transport ad saying this,
the space vehicle of the 90s. Introducing the Pontiac of minivans, the new Pontiac Transport.
And lastly, this Oldsmobile Silhouette commercial featuring the daughter of Leonard Nimoy, who's famous for playing Spock in Star Trek for almost 50 years.
My dad knows all about space vehicles. He directed me to the new Oldsmobile Silhouette. Its looks are stellar, and the interior is perfect for the enterprising family. The modular seats pull out easily. There's a place for everything. Compared to other forms of space travel, Silhouette is the logical choice. Right, Dad?
Eminently logical.
This is the new
Silhouette. Travel in space and style.
generation of Olds.
There are a few other commercials and advertisements that tie in space with these vans, but we gotta keep moving forward because there are several other vans to get to. Around the same time the Dustbuster Vans were released, so was the Nissan Axxess. I'm familiar with a lot of the cars from the 90s. This is one I've never personally seen or even heard of, at least as far as I can remember. The main reason being is these were only offered in the States for 1990. Does this van follow the prompt of having a sloping front end? Of course it does. Funny enough, Nissan had this to say about it.
A drag coefficient that embarrasses the Porsche 911.
A drag coefficient that embarrasses the Porsche 911. Well, that was out of pocket to say. they weren't lying. Nissan claimed a drag coefficient of just 0.30, while Porsche claimed the 911 at 0.32. One of the unique aspects of these vans was they offered double rear sliding doors. That seems like a standard nowadays, but other automakers were yet to offer this feature. It wouldn't be until the mid-90s that automakers started offering it as an option and then eventually became standard. There are multiple reasons why these failed, but the main reason is due to Nissan and Ford focusing on their collaboration. That collaboration would result in the birth of the Quest and Villager. The Toyota Previa was released in 1991, and this has to be my favorite van featured in this video. My second post on my Instagram is of a Previa, and on it had a sticker that said, "The Bean." A bean it is, or an egg, or a jelly bean, but nevertheless, the Previa features that sloping front end. These first-gen Previas had a drag coefficient of only 0.34 thanks to its windshield design, similar to the APV. But the distance from the steering wheel to the base was nowhere near like how it was on the APV. These vans, in my opinion, are better than the Dustbusters. Some years offered all-wheel drive, other models had rear wheel. After '94, there was a supercharged option. They were the first vans to have dual airbags, they look better, and they had an optional cooler/ice maker. Of course, the cherry on top, these were and are more reliable. However, I should mention, since these are mid-engine vans, some shops will refuse to do a simple oil change. You could of course work on it yourself, but not everyone knows how to or has the equipment to do so. I'm not hating on the Dustbusters because they are very unique in their own way. I just would personally pick one of these over them. You know what? I'm creating a poll to see what the majority thinks. 1991 Toyota Previa or 1991 Chevy Lumina APV. The poll will be in the community tab section if you'd like to participate. So the vans mentioned early in this video fit the narrative more than the next few of the extreme sloping space shuttle look. For instance, the Villager and Quest introduced in 1993. They certainly aren't as fun or polarizing as some of the others, but they still feature that sloped front end. The Eagle Summit Wagon and Plymouth Colt, introduced in '93, were captive imports of the Mitsubishi Expo. When we think of DSM or Diamond Star Motors, these cars are practically never brought up. You also never see any of these variations on the road. Regardless, they still have that steep front end, and some refer to them as minivans. Technically, they are wagons, but I know there isn't a visible track, but they did have a passenger sliding door. Some of these came with a 5-speed manual, some had all-wheel drive, some people even slapped in the 4G63 engine.
Roll up in the center lane is right away, 90 gallons.
Lastly is the first generation Honda Odyssey, introduced in 1994. These never came with sliding doors, but they were marketed as minivans and had 3-row seating.
Finally, some fresh thinking in a minivan. Rear windows that go down. Introducing Odyssey with 4 doors and an easy fold-away seat. It's not just a minivan, it's a Honda.
Again, they had a sloping front end, and by this point, it really wasn't unusual and out of the ordinary. Isuzu or Isuzu had a rebadged version as the Oasis, and it would go down as the only Isuzu or Isuzu minivan offered in the States. Come the late 90s, and all of the automakers redesigned their vans. Chevy with the Venture in 97, Ford with the Windstar in 95, that was quickly redesigned since it was crap, the Villager in 99, the MPV in 99, and the States never saw the second-gen Previa. The uniqueness that these late 80s and early 90s vans had is unmatched. The later models that I just listed off are kind of bland, at least in 2024. They still need time, and even then I doubt I'd ever like a Venture to the same degree as a first-gen Previa or APV. That is going to wrap it up for this week's video. I do sure hope you all enjoyed it as much as I had fun making it. My taste in cars is not like anyone of my age, and being able to talk about them is the best. Because you watching, especially if you made it to this point, are interested to a degree in what I'm interested in. And so reading through comments and having this community has really been amazing. If you aren't already subscribed, why not click that button? I'm only going to get better at making these videos. Just look at my older stuff and you'll see what I mean. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will try to see you all next week.